of the Democratic Caucus, Linda Sanchez. First and foremost, let me just say how sad, and I think we all are, at the loss of Barbara Bush, former First Lady of the United States, and wife to former President George Walker Bush. She was a wonderful woman, someone who cared deeply about her family and about her country. She was a true patriot, and she was a great New Yorker as well, originally from Rye, New York, just north of the city. She will be missed. As you know, we're leaving town today. The Republicans have given away tomorrow. With so much to do, it's really reflective of how they've really handled the entire year. They really haven't honestly accomplished much at all. We haven't acted, for instance, on gun safety legislation. We haven't acted on a bill for our dreamers. We haven't taken what I believe is a necessary step to protect Special Counsel Mueller from the Trump administration in his attempt to tap down on his investigation. No one is above the law. No one, including the President of the United States, is above the law. Yet still he's considering firing Mr. Mueller as well as Mr. Rosenstein. And in fact, a move to fire Mr. Rosenstein is the same, in my opinion, as shutting down the investigation and firing Mr. Mueller. And so that mustn't happen. That would certainly create a constitutional crisis. But my Republican colleagues and their leaders are turning a blind eye to this threat on the horizon. Speaker Ryan and Leader McConnell seem content to let this chaotic Trump administration run afoul. We need to be doing more. The American people expect us to do more. They expect us to act. Democrats are ready, and I'm waiting on our Republican colleagues to meet us in that challenge. And with that, let me turn it over to the Vice Chair of the caucus, Ms. Linda Sanchez.
In this country. But I have faith in the American people. I know that they are smart. They understand that that tax plan does not really benefit the middle class in the way that it should. That's why the Republican signature achievement has become an anchor on their poll numbers. So despite the numerous attempts by Republicans trying to extol the virtues of this tax bill, they can't pull the wool over Americans' eyes. Democrats are committed to continuing to fight for a better deal, one that creates jobs, one that reduces the deficit, and one that puts the hard-working middle class of America first, not last. I joined Joe in my concern about the Mueller investigation. Firing Rod Rosenstein or Robert Mueller before the special counsel's investigation has been concluded would cross a huge red line, and the president must allow that independent investigation to run its course. We know that this administration has very little respect for the separation of powers, the Constitution, and allowing the rule of law to move forward, but we are urging all of our congressional colleagues here to ensure.
What I've been saying to my constituents back home who are concerned about the erratic behavior of this president and the chaotic nature of this White House is that there is in place an investigation that Mr. Mueller is conducting, and we need to wait for that investigation to be completed and for him to make his presentation to Congress. No one is above the law, but the law needs to be applied as well here, and that's the standard. I think we should wait for until we see the facts. You cannot. We won't certainly. I don't want to prejudice a case either for or against impeachment, and so I think that everyone is entitled to that. Let me turn to Raquel.
Just similarly, I respond that the investigation must continue. You cannot pursue a case for impeachment without the underlying factual basis for that impeachment. And we are confident that if the independent counsel is allowed to move forward, that we will have facts in hand at some point and can make a determination there.
And just to follow up, if Democrats are able to take back the House, does any of that change? Does what else do you envision Democrats doing in this space next year if you have the
Look,
majority?
I think that it's critically important for Democrats to move back to House of Representatives, because I don't believe that this House is conducting proper oversight of the executive branch across the board. That's part of our charge. Part of it is a legislative charge, the other part is oversight, a check and balance on the executive, and that simply isn't happening under Republican control of the House and the Senate. But as I said before, I think Democrats are incredibly responsible when it comes to these issues, and want to give certainly the breadth of this Mueller investigation the opportunity. That's why we think it's so critical the president not shut this down, not fire Mr. Rosenstein, not fire Mr. Mueller, not curtail the scope of this investigation. Let the facts lead where they may, and let the evidence be presented. And I think the entire Congress, Democrats and Republicans, will have to deal with those issues if and when they're presented to the American people, to the Congress. Yes.
Democrats' lead on the generic ballot continues to shrink. Are you worried about this? And who's at fault here? Is this something you guys aren't doing? Are you not selling your message? Or is this something Trump is doing positively? What's your thought?
You know, these polls go up and down. This is kind of a roller coaster. I think you look at the fact that where we are today, it's very similar to where Republicans were. The number of women that are running for the first time in record numbers, the number of scientists that are running in record numbers for the first time, veterans, former prosecutors, all running as Democrats, because they know what's at stake. They know the future of our nation is at stake, and that's how critical winning this election is in November.
Sidebar, what do you make of this push by Congressman Aguilar and Benham on a Queen of the Hill vote on DACA? Is there any chance of this happening?
Well, that remains to be seen as to whether or not the Republican leadership will actually ever let a good bill or a better bill, a bipartisan bill come to the House floor. And I'll let Ms. Sanchez also comment on this. I, for one, believe we need to do this. We need to have this opportunity. It's something the Democrats, Leader Pelosi has been calling for, we've all been calling for, because we know how desperate these individuals are and how desperately they want to remain in the United States unfettered, as they feel they are right now, based on court decisions and the actions of the president. They need a legislative solution. It's a moral issue. It's an economic issue. It's a moral issue for these individuals, but it's also an economic issue for our country. We need the best, the brightest, and the bravest, and these individuals are incredibly brave and incredibly strong.
Yeah, I would just add that all along we have said that the sole impediment to a permanent legislative fix for DACA recipients and Dreamers is legislation if the Speaker would allow a bipartisan bill to come to the floor. We could pass it. We believe there is enough support within the Republican caucus, but 100 of the most conservative members of that caucus are making policy for the rest of the United States because he refuses to bring that bill to the floor under the belief that if a majority of the majority doesn't support a bill, it doesn't pass. Yeah.
Briefly,
And so I think we have tried multiple avenues to call for a vote. Speaker Ryan alluded to a vote on a DACA fix when he was trying to round up votes for the terrible tax bill that they passed. Republican members individually received commitments for votes on legislative fix for Dreamers, and they're agitating as well. They want to see that vote come up. If there are a number of bipartisan bills that address Dreamers and DACA recipients, and we are trying to force the Speaker essentially to give us a vote, a Queen of the Hill vote, on several bills that are out there. Put them all on the floor and let the legislation with the most votes win. We're confident that it would provide that relief and that certainty. So there remains a lot of commitment, not just on the Democratic side, but among a group of Republicans as well, to try to make that vote a reality in this term.
briefly in Spanish.
Sí, hemos estado luchando para convencer al presidente de la Cámara de Representantes, presidente Ryan, que nos deja votar en un proyecto de legislación bipartidista para dar ese alivio, esa ayuda, esa certitud para los soñadores, pero hasta hoy no ha querido él dejarnos votar en un proyecto de ley. Así que todavía seguimos con un esfuerzo muy grande por parte de Pete Aguilar de California de tratar de forzar a Ryan a poner varios proyectos de leyes bipartidistas a un voto para ver cuál de ellos recibe el número máximo de votos para tener esa solución. Pero seguimos con esa lucha hasta hoy. Speaker Ryan no nos ha...
It's all of the above. I think that, you know, really just in way in which the Ways and Means Committee, for instance, has conducted business, limiting really the time of the minority to even ask inquisitive questions of the Secretary of Treasury or the trade ambassadors. I think that it's all the above. The EPA and what's happening, Mr. Pruitt, you know, the lack of outcry by Republican colleagues for his removal is deafening. But they're so slow, if to act at all, or to even make statements at all, when there's such glaring problems within the administration, the swamp that has been created at this White House, when it comes to the president's son-in-law, whether it's his family connections, or really holding him accountable as it pertains to a myriad of issues, including the money that they derive from their family by renting of their hotel to foreign entities or special interest groups. Just a myriad of issues that are out there that this House of Representatives has not held the President's or his cabinet or this White House to accountability.
Thank you.
Could I just add that with respect to oversight, there would be a much more vigorous oversight. I think starting with the EPA and Mr. Pruitt, prime example. Something like that would never have been tolerated, and I don't understand the lack of willpower to hold the administration accountable to ethics rules, to transparency, hold them to account for misuse and waste of taxpayer money, whether it involves travel or whether it involves redecorating offices. I mean, the litany goes on, and I think Americans deserve to know that these so-called fiscal hawks who are always screaming about government waste and abuse, the minute they have the keys to the kingdom, they're out spending taxpayer money like it's, you know, like it's grown on trees. And I think it's almost criminal, the lack of oversight that's been conducted by the Republican majority in this House. And that's why I agree with Joe that winning back the House in the 2018 midterms is really important for Democrats to be able to provide that oversight. Thank you.
Do me a favor when you're crossing, because just for the cameras, and so your boss, they're not going to use